Here's something that surprised researchers and challenges simple assumptions about weight loss and health. In some studies, blood pressure doesn't decrease even when people lose weight through intermittent fasting. This finding is important because it reveals that cardiovascular health is far more complex than just the number on the scale. Let me walk you through why blood pressure might remain stubbornly elevated despite successful weight loss, and what this means for taking a comprehensive approach to cardiovascular health. Blood pressure is regulated by multiple systems: your kidneys' handling of sodium and water, your blood vessel flexibility and tone, your autonomic nervous system balance, hormone levels including aldosterone and cortisol, and inflammation affecting your endothelium. Weight loss does often improve blood pressure, particularly when visceral fat decreases and reduces inflammatory signaling. But weight is just one variable in a complex system, and for some individuals, other factors dominate their blood pressure regulation regardless of weight changes. Sodium intake is probably the most obvious factor that weight loss doesn't address. If you're eating high-sodium processed foods during your eating window, even if you're eating fewer calories and losing weight, your sodium load remains high. For salt-sensitive individuals, which includes a substantial portion of the population, dietary sodium drives blood pressure more powerfully than weight does. You could lose 20 pounds, but if you're still consuming 4,000 milligrams of sodium daily, your blood pressure might barely budge. This is why the DASH diet, which emphasizes potassium-rich fruits and vegetables alongside sodium reduction, shows robust blood pressure benefits independent of weight loss. Potassium balance matters tremendously too and is often overlooked. Potassium and sodium work in opposition to regulate blood pressure. Modern diets are typically potassium-poor and sodium-rich, the opposite of what our bodies evolved with. Increasing potassium intake through vegetables, fruits, legumes, and certain whole grains can lower blood pressure substantially. But if your intermittent fasting approach involves eating whatever you want during your window, just compressed in time, you might not be improving your potassium intake even while losing weight. Arterial stiffness is another factor that weight loss doesn't necessarily improve, especially in people who've had hypertension for years. Chronic high blood pressure causes structural changes in blood vessel walls. They become less flexible, less able to dilate and constrict appropriately. Even after weight loss, this arterial stiffness can maintain elevated blood pressure. Improving arterial health requires not just weight loss, but also regular aerobic exercise, adequate nitric oxide production from foods like beets and leafy greens, and possibly medications that specifically address endothelial function. Sleep apnea is a huge confounding factor that people often don't consider. Excess weight, particularly around the neck, contributes to obstructive sleep apnea where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep. This causes massive surges in blood pressure, sympathetic nervous system activation, and hormonal disruptions that maintain hypertension. Weight loss can improve sleep apnea, but modest weight loss might not be sufficient if apnea is severe. And if sleep apnea isn't even recognized and treated, blood pressure remains elevated regardless of weight changes. This is why anyone with resistant hypertension should be evaluated for sleep disorders. Chronic stress and anxiety keep blood pressure elevated through constant sympathetic nervous system activation and cortisol elevation. If you're losing weight but your life remains high stress, your blood pressure reflects your stress levels as much as or more than your body weight. This is particularly relevant if your intermittent fasting approach is creating food-related stress. Being constantly hungry, anxious about eating windows, or obsessing over food timing can generate enough stress to counteract any cardiovascular benefits from weight loss. Your blood pressure readings might be telling you that your diet is creating more stress than benefit. Genetics play a role too. Some people have genetic predispositions to hypertension that aren't primarily weight-related. They might need blood pressure medications regardless of achieving ideal weight. This isn't a failure of lifestyle intervention, it's biology. Pretending that everyone can normalize blood pressure through diet and weight loss alone is unrealistic and potentially dangerous, delaying needed medical treatment. the location of fat loss matters more than total weight loss for some cardiovascular outcomes. Losing visceral fat from around organs provides more metabolic benefit than losing subcutaneous fat from hips and thighs. Some people lose weight but don't preferentially lose the metabolically harmful visceral fat, particularly if they're not exercising. Resistance training and higher protein intake can help preserve muscle while preferentially losing fat, and aerobic exercise particularly targets visceral fat reduction. But intermittent fasting alone without attention to exercise and macronutrients might not optimize fat loss location. Here's my comprehensive approach to blood pressure management. Yes, pursue weight loss if needed, but simultaneously reduce sodium intake to below 2,300 milligrams daily. Dramatically increase potassium-rich foods aiming for 4,700 milligrams of potassium daily. Incorporate regular aerobic exercise, which has direct blood pressure lowering effects. Independent of weight, practice stress management through meditation, deep breathing, or other evidence-based approaches. Ensure adequate sleep and get evaluated for sleep apnea if you snore or have symptoms. Limit alcohol, which raises blood pressure even in moderate amounts, and consider increasing foods rich in nitrates and flavonoids that support endothelial function. If blood pressure remains elevated despite comprehensive lifestyle approaches, medication is not a failure or a last resort. It's appropriate medical care. The goal is blood pressure control to prevent stroke, heart attack, kidney disease, and other complications. Whether you achieve that through lifestyle alone or lifestyle plus medication doesn't make you more or less successful as a person. It just reflects the specific factors driving your blood pressure and the interventions needed to manage them. Intermittent fasting that produces weight loss without addressing these other factors might improve some health markers while leaving blood pressure stubbornly elevated. And that's okay as long as you're addressing blood pressure through other means, including medication if necessary.